What's up, guys? Welcome back to FNN Sports Take with me, Kasey Hudson. I hope everyone's having an amazing Monday. My Monday, unfortunately, has felt like a Thursday, like it's almost the end of the week, but there's still so much to do before you can actually celebrate. In other words, it's been a very long day. But as usual, we're kicking off with some NFL conversation, and it was an exciting day in Tampa Bay as the Tampa Bay Bucks coaches were back in the facilities today, showing up in style. You got a little preview on social media of them rolling up in their cars, their nice mask, keeping their safety precautions intact. Some of the guys got fancy masks. Some of the guys had just plain black ones on. Coach Arians had one that looked just like him on his face. It was very interesting to see. Now, of course, we know that obviously because of new additions to the Tampa Bay Bucks team that they're at the top of the conversation in every NFL conversation. Now, as if last week wasn't one thing, this week's going to be a new thing, next week's going to be the next thing. Right now, the question is, in terms of Tom Brady's legacy, if and when we play the Patriots, what's that going to look like? And would the Patriots beat the Bucks? Would the Bucks beat the Patriots? So on and so forth. Well, before we get into all of that, we'll start with the fact that the Bucks are in the NFC South. And the NFC South has one major thing going for them consecutively outside of the Tampa Bay Bucks, and that's that fact that the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons have strong running backs on their team. Now, if you guys paid attention to any film last year or games, depending on which perspective or when you're tuning in and when and how you're breaking games down, you would notice that our young defense did struggle on slowing down run games. That was probably the place where most teams got us the best. The prime example I could give you guys where I was just like clenching my seat, stressed out, couldn't finish watching the game, almost had to leave the media room, was when we played the Arizona Cardinals. That was so tough to watch. Hopefully that was probably one of the biggest things that the guys have worked up, the most conversation about in terms of how they're going to close those gaps and minimize people's run game. Because if they do that, then I have all the faith in the world that the Bucs are going to be the contenders that they're chosen to be this season. It's our time. It's been so long coming. We have the right defensive coach. We have the right head coach. The thing that's stressing me out the most currently, because every week it's something new, is that whenever the conversation comes in terms of Bucks versus Patriots, Patriots versus Bucks, the legacy of Tom Brady and so on and so forth, people talk about the fact that Belichick is one of the greatest coaches of all time, which I'm not saying that he's not. But why are we completely forgetting the fact of Bruce Arians' capabilities or his playoff runs with the Arizona Cardinals? You are as good as the players that you have sometimes or most of the time. When you have a Tom Brady and a Rob Gronkowski, a Julian Edelman, and Danny Amendola, and so on and so forth, one of the top defenses in the nation, you have the whole package to be one of the best coaches in the league. Bruce Arians is right there, if not there. So is it not his turn to be one of the best coaches in the league? Because now he has the Tom Brady and one of the top offenses in the league, in the nation. Is it not time for us to say that Arians is right up there with Bill Belichick? Now, I'm all for being fact-checked, guys. I'm all for educating myself. I'm a nerd. Hit me with the facts. Because of the units that we have on the Tampa Bay Bucks now, can Bruce Arians now qualify or be in the conversation as one of the top coaches in the league? Leave us some comments, shoot us some DMs. I want to have this conversation with you guys because I was getting a little stressed out earlier today when everyone just kept talking about Belichick. Well, all right, now the weapons are on our side. What does that say for Bruce Arians? I've got to know where this conversation is going to go. You guys know me, though. If nothing else, take Tom Brady out of the conversation. I'm always going to be an underdog cheerleader, and I will always find the best way to head off that argument. Now, aside from all of that, all the other hype in Tampa Bay right now is the fact that we will finally see not a digitalized, generated version, but we will finally see Tom Brady in a Tampa Bay Bucks uniform and what that actually looks like. A lot of people are thrilled. A lot of people are wondering if it's actually finally going to happen. Like it's this top mystery. All in all, just stick to your social media tomorrow so you can see this guy wearing, garnet and black. A lot of people are very excited. The Twitter was going off today. At that point, I kind of had to sign off myself. Now, with all the excitement of all this stuff going on, obviously we still are in the midst of a lot of major things in our nation. One of the top ones being the fact that COVID-19 has rocked the sports world since March 11th and March 12th, putting sports seasons on pause, interrupting off seasons that are usually one of the most crucial parts to guys getting in gear. Well, now the question rises, is the NFL being unrealistic on their return plan? We know that coaches are back in the building. We know that for a couple weeks now, players who are only doing medical rehabilitation have been allowed back in the building, but they really, really, really wanted to keep the coaches and the players out of these buildings as much as possible. The only people that were returning were the 75 personnel, staff, just to start getting things going. Well, unfortunately, this question is starting to rear its ugly head and speak a little louder now because we have NFL players that are testing more and more positive for COVID-19. Now, before we go pointing fingers and asking a bunch of ridiculous questions, let's not forget this big word called asymptomatic that happens to be a thing. So many people are carriers and have absolutely no idea. That's why it's like fighting a ghost. We don't know. So with all the unknown, in my personal opinion, a lot of things started to open up a little too fast. A lot of people started acting like things were back to normal a little too fast. I don't think that means that the NFL is moving too fast. I think that it's going to really make the safety protocols and procedures that much harder to make sure that you're checking off all the boxes. Now, of course, many teams have started up their seasons again, or at least started training again. And again, I've said this 100,000 times. We've used as an example the soccer teams across the pond, how they have conducted their games, how they have conducted in their facilities, and how well that's gone. If things have started to spread again, if people are getting ill, so far there's no negative news coming out. So it's really going to come down to the fact that it's going to circle back to maybe no fans absolutely being in the stands. But then again, the fans don't have as much contact, but this is an airborne thing to some extent. There's still so many unknowns with this COVID-19 situation. All in all, as long as they can really keep the safety and the cleaning procedures down packed for these facilities, because you just have to think of how large it is and the staff that's going to take to really keep this clean, then I don't see any point in pushing everything back. At some point, you've got to give something a try, and every team that's getting the ball rolling, the only place that they're slowing down at is financial issues, not the fact that they're concerned about COVID-19, or at least that conversation is not speaking as loudly as others. So there has been some talk on whether or not the NFL will actually push back their start date. The biggest thing I will say that I agree with is that trying to manage a 90-man roster and be clean and maintain safety protocols and make sure that nobody, so on and so forth, that is going to be pretty stressful and pretty aggressive to manage. Because the hard part with all of this is that the minute these guys step out of the facility, you can tell them, you can advise them, you can ask them not to do particular things. You cannot count on everyone not to do particular things, like go hang out in groups of people and not know if anyone's a carrier, and then come to the facilities, get tested. And then what happens if they were hanging out with a teammate that night in the midst of all of it, and one guy tests positive, the next guy doesn't? It's just going to cause a lot of chaos and confusion. But if we can hold everybody accountable to kind of, continue to isolate themselves, continue to maintain what they're doing, how often they're out and about, who they're amongst, wear your mask everywhere you go, still wash and sanitize your hands. Guys, I swear I have not seen anybody wash their hands in like a month. Hand sanitizer, I don't know if it ran out or people just stopped putting it in their hands, but when this really broke out months ago, like, you saw everybody washing their hands every chance they got, and hand sanitizer coming out of purses like candy. Like, people were doing that. I feel like a weirdo wearing a mask in public now. So I will say I understand the fear there, because it's just like, it's almost as if it's not happening, and it's happening. So on a side note, if you want to see your teams back in action this fall, do your part. There is a pandemic still going on. Until it's completely gone or there's a vaccine, everybody has to do their part. Now, I'm sure somebody's getting the brunt end of that lecture, that mini lecture I just gave you guys, because when it comes to players testing positive for COVID-19, Ezekiel Elliott is on the hot plate today, and you can tell he's not too happy about it, because before he even got a chance to address it on Twitter, he was being called out as if it's some big secret or like scandal. The guy tested positive for COVID. He's going to self-quarantine. We're going to move on. The only problem is that he is kind of proving on the side of how quickly this can all ramp back up. A perfect example is the fact that aside from the financial issues, the MLB's other hesitation is that they're predicting a full-on second wave here and don't want to get too far into games and have to call it a quits. So the next question, aside from Bruce Arians, that this brings me to is, are people and players getting a little too lax on safety protocols and procedures? Do we need to still be upholding the protocols and the guidelines given to us 60 days ago? Or, does everyone need to live a little and see how your antibodies respond and move on? I'm up for either one. Now, In terms of the other big thing taking place in our nation, we know that social injustice has been one of the top headlines taking place for weeks now, and more players are speaking up all the time. But now we've got players actually clapping back on social media. We had Baker Mayfield and J.J. Watt get into a little bit of a Twitter tangle this past weekend as fans decided to not only speak at them, but speak for them. In Baker Mayfield's case, somebody made a comment as to, "I hope you're not going to be kneeling on the field this coming season." And Baker Mayfield's response to them was, "Pull your head out. I absolutely am kneeling." Well, after that, even though he was simple and straight to the point, he felt the need to further explain himself and take back to Twitter to just kind of say, if you're still asking me this question, you don't get it. Well, J.J. Watt was along the same lines, but for a very humble and graceful J.J. Watt, this was pretty much, you could tell he's getting frustrated with how this is all taking place, because his response to a fan who decided to say, "I know J.J. Watt won't be kneeling," he said, "A, don't speak for me, and B, if you still think it's about disrespecting the flag or our military, you clearly haven't been listening." So you could tell that things are flaring up just a little bit. Everyone's just trying to get on the same narrative, and that's very hard when you're in crowds larger than 5. I mean, if you hang out with a group of 5 people and play telephone, clearly the message gets misconstrued. So we're trying to play the largest game of telephone right now and clarifying the narrative in terms of, what players and people and humans want right now. And there's this whole simplified version of it, and then there's a whole complex version of it. But all in all, it's great to see more people just kind of supporting and backing each other. And it's great to just see more progression and the positive change and aspect of everything taking place in our world right now. Guys, stick with us as we head to a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we talk some NHL.
All this time we fought side by side. We trained together. We lost together. And now, you're the only one standing in my way. It's been a while, old friend.
All right, guys, welcome back. So when it comes to NHL news, Commissioner Bettman decided that he needed to release a statement to put some minds at ease. "Quote unquote, NHL won't be too gimmicky." Well, if you ask the same question I asked, which was, what is that supposed to mean? It's clapping back and responding to everybody being so concerned and so worried with these playoffs basically having an asterisk next to it. Look, guys, sometimes I even stress myself out with the way that I have to repeat myself, but I don't feel like I get the point across sometimes. When I tell you that the NHL and the NBA run very parallel to one another, they run very parallel to one another. Players are very concerned that this is not going to mean as much as any other season. Well, I can understand that. In the same sense, this is the edge or the positivity or the light that I'm going to shine on this. After going cold turkey and cutting your seasons in half, pausing them, getting multiple games being lost out now, not being able to train the way that you're typically used to training those intricate muscles or your bodies in general, not being able to completely stick to certain guidelines or health lines that you have had to do every year or every off season or before a playoff that you've typically stuck to for years on end, you're in a whole different mentality right now. Your body is in a whole different position. You're going to shock the hell out of your body right now. So it's not going to be an asterisk season, in my opinion. Yes, it sucks to the fact that some teams didn't get an opportunity to prove themselves or have that last chance to squeeze their foot in the door. But all in all, to go from, being hot to go to completely cold to not training the same way that you're supposed to diving back into it in sprint form, you're talking about asking your body to do a lot. So this competition is going to be quite stiff to the fact of who can rise to the occasion, who can really come out of this and get their body back in that tip-top form, go from regular season to playoffs overnight. And it really is kind of overnight. You're not having the same timeline or time frame to build up the momentum to get into a certain mind frame and gear to play at the level that you're about to have to play out just to close the season, have minimal downtime to turn around and hop back into another season as if everything's been normal. So that's my whole take on the whole asterisk season. And I do understand where Commissioner Bettman's coming from and saying it's not going to be gimmicky. Like, I understand the guys that are also frustrated because they don't want to buy a week out the gate because they don't want to feel like they're going to lose momentum. In the same sense, it's like you just have to take a step back and realize you're already putting yourself, your body, your team in a very critical condition to just jump into a playoff mode. Now, the one other good news in this is the fact that Las Vegas was confirmed as one of the hub cities for playoffs. I kind of saw that one coming because if you think about how Las Vegas makes their money, their revenue, it's because people travel there all year long. Being shut down for 60, 90, however many days that we have been in quarantine and minimal travel, because quarantine, I can't even tell you when it got lifted or if we're still in it. I'm so confused. But all in all, that put a huge damp on how much money Las Vegas usually really draws in. And they were already minimizing how many concerts and shows they were putting on before that with nothing to do with COVID-19. So I kind of saw the Las Vegas thing coming. That will be amazing, not only for the city, but I think that'll be great for the players. I think that'll be manageable isolation for them as well, because if you're not on the strip, you're literally in the desert. The one unfortunate thing is that Dallas Stars are one of the participants in the upcoming playoffs for the NHL, and one of their star defensemen, Roman Polak, told Czech reporters that he will do everything he can to avoid returning to the NHL this summer to complete a restarted season, while also announcing that he agreed to join the Czech League team for the 2020 and 2021 season. So he will not be returning and joining the Stars. There wasn't a full length of explanation as to why he was so adamant on not coming back to the States right now. But, you know, he could have put himself in a really cross position when some players, I mean, only 17% of NHL players actually returned to their homes if they lived or if they're from overseas. And because it was highly recommended against for these guys to leave the States, obviously, because Europe and across the pond was hit with COVID-19 first, and that spread was what it was. I think he probably got himself in a contract position because the unknown over here, not only is it still going, but it was heavily unknown a couple months ago. And when you sign those contracts overseas, you're not let out of it. So it's probably easier for him to not only stay put, protect himself, protect his family, keep his legs strong, keep his body healthy, and then hopefully he rejoins us for the 2021-2022 season. Geez, I'm not going to enjoy pronouncing that year at all. But that will be an unfortunate twist of events for the Dallas Stars because they do have strong forwards. But when it comes to those defensive men or those real physical guys, I mean, Block's one of them. So that'll be a bit of a miss for them. But I'm not complaining because it gives an advantage to my team. So, all right, guys, stick with us as we head to another commercial break, and then we come back breaking down some NBA.
At Taco John's, you can expect one thing, so good. As in quality ingredients used in tacos and burritos made just for you. Every single bite.
So good.
Expect nothing less at Taco John's.
All right, guys, welcome back. As we jump into some NBA, we know one name that is resounding through the NBA. That would be head coach Greg Popovich, and he had some words, maybe almost some advice, but some words for Commissioner Roger Goddell. Quote unquote, he says a smart man, is running the NFL, and he didn't understand the difference between the flag and what makes the country great. All people who fought to allow Colin Kaepernick to have the right to kneel for justice. Popovich told the New York Times in a column posted Saturday, the flag is irrelevant. It's just a symbol that people glom onto for political reasons. He also decided to add that Goodell got intimidated when Trump jumped on kneeling and he folded. If there's one person I would never want to get called out by in life, it's Popovich. The man is very blunt, to the point. There's no arguing with him. He probably low-key went to law school at some point in his life. It's just that he don't want his name and your name in the same sentence and it not be a positive notion. So we don't know if or what Roger Goodell will respond back to that, but we also know that some players have started speaking up since the apology from Roger Goodell, as well as the NFL, in terms of what they're going to do and to make better progress, to hear the athletes more clearly, and to progress forward. So far, most of the players say that, they accept the apology. They just want to see how it continues to unfold and if the actions will now back up these new words. And other players are on pins and needles because, as we mentioned last week, President Trump did take to Twitter to share his thoughts on everything. And when he did so, that usually does cause some folding, retraction, or pausing. So, hopefully not again, I am more always on the positive side of things, and there has been so much positive progress, so many new voices, so much more collective efforts, and I would hate to think that that all gets put on pause out of fear, but fear is one of the biggest condolences of pausing or retracting or things just completely stopping. So it's 2020, guys. I hope that we can all rise above that and continue to move forward and continue to keep this momentum going. Now, players are continuing to share how much they are actually against returning in light of, but now they're saying that they don't particularly want to return in light of the protesting and all the racial situations taking place. They don't want to distract, is what Kyrie Irving says. He feels that if he returns to this season, then it's actually just going to be a distraction and take away from all the progress that's being made. Nearly 100 players hopped on a call discussing this, not just from the protesting standpoint, but also from the fact that a lot of these guys are not happy with going to Disney. A lot of these guys do not want to be away from their families or do not want to deal with the stresses of not having their families with them. Now, when it comes to the family situation, or there are still COVID-19 concerns amongst all of this, I do genuinely, truly understand that. As for the protesting and the not wanting to play because of distracting, what you're basically implying is that people cannot pay attention to everything. I mean, it's kind of our jobs to pay attention to everything that's going on in the world. It's each individual's choice as to how much they pay attention to everything. So to not only decide to not play the game, to not return to your career, to return to your opportunity while millions of people who are still jobless or who still don't have an opportunity to work, you have that opportunity, utilize it. And it's also going to be a bright spot in a lot of heavy, dark times that are taking place right now. I mean, between COVID-19 and the protesting and the social injustice that's taking place, people are begging for sports, not just because they're bored and not just because you guys are entertainment, but for me, sports is such a light outside of like the whole entertainment aspect of it. It's hope. It gives a lot of hope. It keeps people connected. It creates camaraderie, even if you can't be in the stands or arenas with one another. So there's something there about it that's obviously bigger than just the game itself. So hopefully he might think a little bit harder on that one, because there's not a lot of players saying that, but all it takes is a couple people whispering one thing before it becomes a bigger conversation. And all in all, if you are into protesting, then you have a platform as a player on a court, on a field, on a pitch. So it's something you can continue doing so that the conversation doesn't get minimized or silenced. But on top of that, you're still giving back in a sense too to people who've been looking forward to this for so long in such crazy times. I mean, nobody would have predicted that the world as well as our nation would be where it's at today, right now in this moment. Those are my thoughts on not returning because of protesting. And then the Disney thing, I don't understand either. But when it comes to COVID and families, I get it. Most of these guys, even though they travel a lot, they have wives or children that can travel with them for parts of their season. Or before you go into a season, you have a whole strategy, you have a whole plan, and to not be able to have an opportunity or time to really do so, it's stressful, and it can just kind of make you want to opt out of the situation and all in all. Now, the other big thing with the NBA is the fact that they are now hitting some financial speed bumps themselves. There hasn't been much conversation as to what they would have to do or if those negotiations are going to deter the return plan. So far, it's just the fact that the guys aren't a big fan of Disney, and now some people feel odd going back while there are protests going on, and they don't want to change the narrative. So that is the biggest thing going on with the NBA. When it comes to the MLB, I guess we could just wrap it all up in a bow. MLB is feeling the same way too. The money fight continues. They still cannot come to an agreement. No negotiations are going well. And, training camp was supposed to start 2 weeks ago, and opening day is supposed to be in 2.5 weeks. That's really the gist of it all over again. Now, every time that these conversations come up, the MLBPA says that they will not be giving a counter offer, and then they come back with a counter offer. So right now we're basically waiting for another counter offer. Although the MLB commissioner spoke up to say, you know what, at this point, I'm just very less confident in the fact that we will even have a 2020 season. Well, I'm right there with you, Commissioner, because at this point, you guys are kind of, your windows, if it's not closed yet, it's like right there. It's basically done. Now for some soccer excitement, we know that the MLB returned, not the MLB, excuse me guys. I always do that with all these acronyms. The MLS returned. Orlando City Soccer was actually in full training mode yesterday, or this morning. Here I go again. This morning, the club's training plan was reviewed and approved by Orlando Health, local infectious disease experts, and the Major League Soccer. Those guys were very stoked to get out there and get back on the pitch and start working out again, feeling like they have a real season ahead of them. And we actually got to hear some words back. Here's a quick clip from Orlando City's head coach on what his expectations are.
We want to see from them first an evaluation of the last 2 months and how we sustain that level, because now they're going to apply it into the real game. We're going to be obviously every day encourage them to do actions that make different combinations, but at the same time they're going to expose their preparation during the last 2 months and see where we are. The real game, just covering the whole field and just making movements as a collective, is a different part that we want to analyze. But I have no doubts about this group, and I have no doubts that have been a very good work by the boys, and they are ready.
All right, guys, I have faith in them too. I'm not going to lie. I did mention my stresses, my concerns, and all my feelings about the fact that they open up versus David Beckham's team, International Miami FC. Man, I really want to just be like, International's taking it and call it a day, but I think Orlando City has that shot and that slot. Only just because I wasn't seeing that much magic just yet. It does take guys some time to build those chemistries and those connections, but I wasn't seeing the sparks just yet in those few couple of games that International Miami FC had an opportunity to play before COVID. So good luck to Orlando City and that whole tournament style. I'm sure it's going to be so much fun though, hopefully aside from all the fears and expectations, because I know when I played soccer when I was younger, youth 13, 14, 15, these tournament styles were so much fun. I mean, I didn't even want to go eat after games. I was just ready for the next game. And I was tired, sunburnt, and hungry, but I was just ready to play. So I'm sure that they're extremely excited as well. Now for more soccer excitement and in Orlando, Florida of all things, Orlando Pride actually got some renovations. Finally, the lounge, the training room, the locker room, and now they have a media room. Yes. We're so excited for them because it just makes them feel more official, more at home. Orlando is their home. And here is a clip of Kreger talking further about the renovations.
It's really refreshing. Honestly, we deserve it. And it's a place where we can actually relax and do work off the field. We have a recovery room, we have our weight room in there. We're eating together. We're just sharing just a closer space, and we're able to kind of just enjoy that time off the pitch and really focus in on other details that we need to do, like analysis and watching video and things like that, but also getting treatment and doing recovery properly and having a space to do it, which is essential for playing football at this level. And I think that it's bringing us closer together, and it's honestly what we deserve playing for this club and the NWSL. And I can only hope that every other club can have an opportunity to have the same things, because it's really changed our mentality as a group. And we have a space now that we can just call home and call ours.
I can only imagine. I mean, facilities are supposed to be a home away from home, just because when you're in season, think about how much time you were actually there and how many needs you have, or preparation needs that you have. So to have that all finally come together and to feel like that home away from home, I know that that's like a huge, huge excitement for the Orlando Pride. I know that I cannot wait, hopefully shortly soon, to be able to see those renovations live and direct, especially that new media room. All right, guys, that is just about it for us tonight. Just remember, I always have to leave you guys with something that's on my mind. Usually it's to stay safe, sane, compassionate, and kind, which please do all of that. Again, COVID-19 does not exist right now. So we all have to put our thinking caps on and our best foot forward and just do the best, not only for ourselves, but for each other. In the midst of everything going on, I advise, don't mistake grace for silence. Don't mistake patience for naivety. Don't mistake strategy for ignorance or reservation for weakness. The terms timing is everything and delivery is everything are significant with purpose. Constructive, effective purpose. The best way to put our best foot forward is to take ourselves out of our own shoes, get out of our own heads, and to be more open-minded. Put your best foot forward, guys. I'll see you on Wednesday at 8 p.m. to chat more about everything else taking place in the sports world. Stay safe.